It's time for your Low Country real estate market update. It's the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show. Brian is one of the top 1% real estate agents in Charleston. Find him online at listingsincharleston.com. That's listingsincharleston.com. Or call him at 843-345-1273. Now, broadcasting from the WTMA studios, here's your host, Brian Beatty.
Good morning, Charleston. You're listening to the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show here on the Big Talker, 1250 WTMA. Thanks for joining me this morning. I'm your host, Brian Beatty. We've been doing this program now for, 4 going on 5 years, talking about real estate here in the Low Country, everything you need to know about residential real estate, the market, what's going on within it, stats. I like to read off a lot of stats, and I like to share my experiences and stories with you as somebody that's been selling real estate in this market for the past 10 years, about 1,000 transactions under my belt. I work with one of the top teams here in the Low Country, and we're going to talk about quite a lot this weekend. I've got several things I want to cover. I want to talk about the current state of the market. Is now the right time to buy or sell real estate? We're going to talk a little bit about timing because that issue is coming up a lot. A little later on, we're going to talk about marketing. What actually needs to happen in order for you to sell a home in this market? It's a seller's market. Do you need to do all the bells and whistles to sell a home? And should you? Later on, we're going to talk about issues with your HOA. Got a few unfortunate stories that I want to read to you that were brought to my attention on some things you need to know if you're going to buy a home in a homeowners association. And then finally, we're going to talk about open houses. Do they work? So a lot to cover over the next hour or so. If I can help you in any way, shape, or form, you're thinking about buying, selling, or investing in real estate, would love the opportunity to talk with you off air about your real estate needs. I can be reached at 843-345-1273. Or you can go to my website, listingsincharleston.com. That's listingsincharleston.com. You can learn more about who we are as a team and what we do and what we sell and all that fun stuff. And, of course, if you're thinking about selling your home, we are still offering that 2.4% listing commission to help you sell your home this year. It's at least a 20% savings on the listing commission. And then we've partnered with a local lender that will pay up to $5,000 in closing costs for a buyer for your home, as well as $5,000 for you when you go to buy a home. So a bunch of different ways to save money on my team if you choose to work with us. So again, 345-1273 is my number, or listingsincharleston.com is the website to go to. So let me get right into things. I want to talk about the current state of the market. We're now in the home stretch of 2016. It just seems like time has been flying by over the past few months. And the vast majority of people we're dealing with now, we're having new conversations discussing plans about buying or selling a home next year. Not a ton of people are, their back is up against the fence. They have to buy or sell this year. We're running into them every once in a while, but the majority of the people are planning for next year. Sellers, as an example, they're preparing to go on the market in the spring. They're starting to do some research on home values and what they might need to do to their home to sell it, and most importantly, what they can go and buy that's going to be a better situation than the one they're currently living in. Now, the lack of housing inventory is it's a chicken or the egg dilemma, really is what it is. Buyers can't find a home because there aren't enough of them, which is also what's driving up prices, by the way. And then sellers, although they're motivated by higher prices, can't necessarily sell because they're afraid that they'll end up homeless and they won't be able to find what they want to buy. And so new construction that kind of plays into the mix is growing, but it's not enough to ease this logjam that we've created here. So the desire to sell is there, which should be good news in a market like this, especially one that's short on housing inventory. But sellers are facing challenges right now, not just the buyers. It's tough on the sellers too. Realtor.com did a survey, and it found the following. It said that the top motivations for selling this year was, number one, they wanted a different neighborhood. Number 2 and number 3 shared the same statistical value, 21%, saying they either needed a bigger home or they needed a home with different features. Then, going down the line, people wanted a smaller home, then they wanted a location with better weather or view or lifestyle, and then toward the bottom 2, where they needed to lower their cost of living, or they were getting retired or just about to be retired and needed to change up their housing situation. So looking at our local stats, if you look at just the stats in general for the area in which our MLS is comprised of, which is Charleston, Berkeley, Dorchester, and Colleton County, April of this year was actually the year with the most amount of homes for sale at any given point in time. There was 6,129 homes for sale in our entire MLS. Interesting, though, March of this year was when we had the most properties go under contract, which was 1,845 homes, which is a ton of business. In March, the median days on market before going under contract was about 25 days. So that means that based on, some basic calculations here, that the best time to sell this year was actually not April. It was sometime in February or maybe even late January. You have to take into account the days on market when you're looking at these kind of statistics. And the same thing holds true when you're looking at comparable properties. So let's say that something sells and that becomes a comp, and you're looking at making an offer on a home in a neighborhood, and you're looking at things that have sold in the past 6 months. Well, let's say you find a home that was comparable that sold 6 months ago. Well, what you have to understand is that that home was likely under contract for probably 30 to 45 to even 60 days. So it was actually 8 months ago that they agreed to sell the property at that price. And 8 months ago, they were looking at comparable properties 6 months prior to that. So you've got this backlog of data that I don't think people at times take into consideration when we're looking at things like pricing, which is what a lot of people look at. They look at the median sales price. And the month with the highest median sales price was in June. I think it topped out at $250,000. So having said that, prices have steadily increased all year in most areas. But there are some areas that have hit a little bit of a ceiling in some cases. In fact, there are some areas that are now beginning to become saturated with inventory, which is prolonging the days on market. And when homes sit on the market for extended periods of time, sellers usually need to make price reductions in order for those homes to sell. So in some of these areas, spring might actually not be your best time to sell next year. I'd argue, frankly, that it might be best for you to consider selling right now versus waiting until spring of next year, especially if you're in some of those pockets of our Tri-County area or, including Colleton County. So if you're considering selling your house, reviewing general market stats, which I read off a lot on this program, and I do admit that, and I like to give you a general idea of where our market is, because I think that's important. People rely on this program for unbiased information on what's going on in our housing market. And so if you're looking at considering selling your home either this year or next, reviewing the general market stats gives you a good idea of the overall supply and demand trends, as well as general pricing trends. But real estate is hyper-local. It always will be, meaning every price range, every area, every neighborhood is different. So for all the people asking the question, when is the best time to sell? The answer is, it depends. Looking at the trends that surround your specific home and making determinations together based on your goals and my ability to interpret the market is what's going to help us arrive at that answer. But I will say this, being motivated to sell your home isn't enough in some of these cases. Just because the market favors sellers does not mean you'll have an easy time selling your home. And this is evidenced by all the properties that have tried selling so far this year. They listed in the spring, just like everybody's coached to do, and it sat on the market for 6 months. If you listed in April and it hasn't sold, you've been on the market for half a year now, and it hasn't sold. Why not? Again, being motivated to sell does not necessarily mean that your home will sell. It means that you and your agent need to craft a strategy based on the trends that surround your specific home, so that you're in line with those trends and positioned correctly to sell. And so what I want to talk about next, and I'm going to spend a good amount of time on it, is how to market homes to get them sold in this market. It's not just enough to put the property in the MLS and get away with not taking photos that look that good and pricing it at an okay price, leaving a lot of room for negotiation, and think it's going to sell in 30 days. Don't get me wrong, it might, but it probably won't. In fact, I would say that now is the best time as a seller to try and take advantage of the seller's market. If you do everything correctly, if you market it at a really high level, you take those professional photos and you're aligned with a real estate agent that really knows what they're doing, I guarantee you there are some agents out there that can help you sell your home for more money than the other agent. And it all has to do with positioning, and then it has to do, in my opinion, with marketing. And so that's what I want to talk about next. So we're going to take a break. If this is something you want to talk about, you want more information on what the value of your home is, you're thinking about maybe selling sometime next year or this year, would love the opportunity to discuss that with you. I can be reached at 843-345-1273. Again, that's 843-345-1273, or go to listingsincharleston.com. That's listingsincharleston.com for more information on that 2.4% listing commission incentive that we're offering this year, as well as the closing costs incentive for working with our local lender. So we'll be right back. This is the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show here on the Big Talker 1250 WTMA.
It's the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show. Broadcast Saturday mornings at 9 and Sunday mornings at 10 on the Big Talker 1250 WTMA. WTMA. You're listening to the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show on the Big Talker 1250 WTMA and WTMA.com.
Welcome back, Charleston. Thanks again for tuning in to the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show here on the Big Talker 1250 WTMA. We were just talking about the housing market. We were talking about how, even though in this market with limited inventory, that there are struggles for the buyer out there that are trying to find inventory. There's not enough property hitting the market. New construction isn't really filling the gap like people were hoping it would. But there are also some challenges for sellers too. And so if you missed that, I have just spent a lot of time putting every single show that I have ever done on WTMA on my website. So you are welcome to go to listingsincharleston.com. That's listingsincharleston.com, and you can hear any show I have ever recorded on this program on that website. You can also, of course, reach out to me if you're thinking about selling a home. That 2.4% listing commission still applies. We still have the local lender we're working with that will pay $5,000 or up to 1% of the loan amount, whatever is lower, either for the buyer for your home if you're a seller, or for you as a buyer when you go to buy something. So a bunch of different ways to save some money on my team. And of course, you can give me a call, 843-345-1273. That's 345-1273. So let me talk about online marketing. I will say, and I'll toot my own horn for just a brief second, I believe that I have built my real estate business off of my ability to market properties for sale and to find buyers directly and to generate enough qualified interest in a home to get it sold quickly and for top dollar. That is what I believe I've built my business off of. I firmly understand online marketing. In fact, in 2006, I was Entrepreneur of the Year at the College of Charleston for creating a real estate-based online marketing company. So that's kind of what springboarded me into residential sales. And so ever since then, I have spent a very large amount of my time and resources into online marketing, into creating a marketing plan that works. So let me just tell you very, very simply how this works. And I'll say this. I think that a lot of sellers believe that real estate agents simply put the property in the MLS, and then that's about all that they do. And I have to tell you that in some instances, that's true. I would not say most, because I do think that agents, for the most part, have a general concept of how to market properties and do more than just click a few buttons and put it in the MLS. I don't think we're giving the agents enough credit in that regard. But I don't think there are a lot of agents out there that really understand how to create interest, how to cultivate that interest, and then how to convert that interest into actual business. So when you put a property in the MLS, this is what happens. The agent, enters the property in the MLS, puts the photos on there, saves the listing. The listing is now live in the MLS. As soon as it goes into the MLS, it is then automatically shared on every single real estate agent and every single real estate company's website. So as an example, you go to listingsincharleston.com, you're not just seeing my listings, you're seeing all listings. All websites are that way, for the most part. It would be stupid not to offer a buyer or a seller the majority of the information available on the market, because they could just go to Zillow or Trulia or Realtor.com and they could find it. So it wouldn't make sense to limit the amount of information someone provides. So there's no differentiating factor between agents when it comes to putting a property in the MLS, because all agents and all companies share all listings. From there, it's going to go on Realtor.com. Realtor.com syndicates listings from the MLS, and it's updated every 15 minutes or so. And so a lot of properties go on Realtor.com. The same can hold true for websites like Zillow and Trulia, which is owned by Zillow, by the way, and Homes.com and all these other websites out there, thousands and thousands and thousands of websites. I think I'm over 5,000 websites is what my homes appear on. And a bunch of those websites, I've never gotten a lead from one of them, but my motto when it comes to online marketing is that wherever someone is looking is where I want to be. And then my other motto that I use when it comes to marketing is that I want my homes to be the prettiest girl at the dance. I want my homes to look awesome online. And we spend a lot of our time and energy and money to make sure that that happens through professional photography as one example, which we'll get into in just a second. But when it comes to, I don't want to leave this topic, Zillow as an example. Everybody knows Zillow at this point. People that have listened to this program for a long time know how I feel about Zillow. However, it is a tool that I believe offers a overwhelmingly large amount of information to a potential buyer or seller. And in that regard, it's great. I will never agree with the Zestimate. I think it sucks. I hate it. I don't even want to talk about it because people know how I feel about it. It's inaccurate. Please don't rely on Zestimates to price your home. Just don't do it. Ask an agent. Ask me, and I'll tell you for free what I think your home is worth. Don't rely on the Zestimate. But that's not what I'm saying here. When you look at Zillow, let's say you're a buyer. Let's say you go online. You look at some properties in a certain area in a certain price range, and you click on a property. You like it. You look through the photos. You read the description. Everything looks good. Now it comes time to say, hey, I want to take a look at this property, or hey, send me more information on this property. Well, if you're listen carefully, because you will never look at properties the same way if you're looking at some of these websites. If you go to Zillow as an example and you pull up an individual listing, you are going to see one of two things when it comes time to submit your information to either request a viewing or more information on that property. You're either going to see 3 or 4 different agents listed on the right-hand side. You get to choose which person you want to contact, and you're going to look at their, ratings, their reviews, how many homes they've sold, and you're just going to make a choice. The other option is that you're only going to see one person there, the listing agent. So what's the difference? How is a listing agent able to provide exclusivity versus all these other listings where you have to choose from 3 or 4 other agents? Well, it's because they're paying their dues, folks. It's because they're paying for exclusivity. On my listings, you will not see other agents. I believe that, and look, all these websites are smart. They're for-profit companies. They're charging real estate agents to appear on their listings and to have the exclusivity of any buyer that's interested in their property. Well, obviously, it makes sense for me in representing a seller to pay to ensure that if a buyer is interested in my property, that they are not going to be put in touch with another random, unrelated real estate agent that frankly knows nothing about the listing that the buyer's inquiring about in the first place. So it's not just about paying for all this marketing and paying to appear in all these websites. You also have to pay to ensure control over the interested buyer and the listing agent. It's incredibly important. Not a lot of people are focusing on that. They're focusing on the bells and whistles. They're not focusing on the conversion. That, by the way, is what separates the professionals in terms of marketing from the people that are just kind of figuring it out as they go. And don't get me wrong, everybody starts out at different levels. It just so happens that I have a lot of knowledge when it comes to online marketing. And so I very firmly understand that if someone's going to hire me to sell their house, the worst thing that could happen, in my opinion at least, is that we have this interested buyer submit their information. They say, hey, yeah, I want to see that home, or I want more information. But then they get put in the hands of some other random real estate agent. And guess what? That random real estate agent that appears on the side when you go to click on one of these properties, their goal isn't necessarily to sell the house that the buyer initially inquired about. It's their goal to just sell them a house. Now, I'm not here to say that agents are going to push them toward other listings. They might. That's very possible. But that's the issue that you run into when you lose control of the process of, a buyer submitting an inquiry and it getting to the listing agent, the person that actually represents the seller, versus just going out for a bunch of agents to fight over, to get leads on. Now, don't get me wrong. You'll see me appear on that list of 3 or 4 different agents because I pay to appear there as well. If an agent's too cheap to pay to maintain exclusivity on their own listings, then I'm going to pay to take the leads in the areas that I focus on so that I can work with more buyer clients. But, it really boils down, in my opinion, not just to the attractiveness of the listing online through professional photography and 3D tours and drone video and all that fun stuff that we do to market our properties for sale. And it's not just about the exclusivity of the lead, which we just talked about. I think it also has a lot to do with proactive selling. There's, not everything is done online. Don't get me wrong. The majority of what's done is done online, but not everything. I pay 2 people in my office full time to pick up the phone and make calls and make contacts and find buyers for our sellers and find sellers for our buyers, or the other way around. We'll call neighborhoods. Let's say we list a property. We're going to call, especially if it's in a neighborhood where there are a lot of people that rent in that area. We're going to call up the renters and say, we just put this property on the market. We noticed that you're paying X amount in rent, assuming that was something that was recorded on the MLS. If you buy this home, you'd actually be spending $50 a month less on the property. Is that something that you're interested in? And then boom, we start picking up all these buyers for our listings because we're being proactive, because we're reaching out to people in the community, because we're calling our database, because we're calling agents. God, I could go on forever about this topic because I love it. But the last thing that I want to mention really quickly is social media. There is such an opportunity in this market to create interest in properties through social media, yet so many real estate agents, although they're doing it, they don't really know how to do it effectively. I'll give you one example, and then we'll move on. There was a property that I listed, and about 2 weeks ago, I paid to put out a Facebook ad for this property, put some pictures out there, put a little slideshow together, and then I paid to strategically place it, both demographically and geographically, in front of people that I thought might be buying a home in the next few months, or that at least expressed an interest in buying a home in the next few months. Well, in that 2-week period, we have had 32,000 people look at the post. We've had almost 300 likes. We've had almost 50 shares. We've had over 100 comments, and we've had over 50 people that we've communicated with about that listing, many of which have resulted in showings. So there's an opportunity out there to use some of these resources to sell real estate at a very high level, but you have to have an agent that understands how to do that. It's not just a matter of throwing money at stuff to see if it works. It takes, you got to pay to play when you're in a really aggressive market like we're in right now, especially when it comes to agents that want listings. They're going to start promising you things to try and create activity for you and exposure for you, regardless of whether they know what they're doing or not. They might just say, hey, we're going to do this. And then behind the scenes, they're going to say, all right, well, how do we do this? The point I'm trying to make is that in this market right now, you have an opportunity as a seller to sell your home fast and to sell it for top dollar. And if you align yourself with a real estate agent that really understands marketing and that can price your home effectively, and you've taken some time to address the condition of your home, you will sell your home for top dollar. It's all the other people out there that, in my mind, are doing the bare minimum, yet still achieving a sale, that are leaving some money on the table. So if that's something you want to talk about in greater detail, something I can help you with, you want to talk about my marketing plan, obviously don't share that on the air. I've got a lot of real estate agents to listen to this program. But if you want to talk to me personally, give me a call, 843-345-1273. That's 345-1273. Or go to my website, listingsincharleston.com. Remember, 2.4% commission on the listing side to help you sell your home. And then the local lender that'll pay up to $5,000 toward closing costs. So stick around. We're going to talk about HOAs and some nightmare stories associated with HOAs and what you need to know before you buy a home in an HOA right when we come back. This is the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show here on the Big Talker 1250 WTMA.
Visit Brian Beatty's website at listingsincharleston.com. The Brian Beatty Real Estate Show continues next on the Big Talker 1250 WTMA. 1250 WTMA. Now, the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show continues on Charleston's Big Talker 1250 WTMA.
Welcome back, Charleston. Thanks again for tuning in to the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show. We were just talking about marketing. We were talking about marketing properties for sale, what you can do, what should be done to create exposure for your home. And there's a lot that can be done to sell real estate in this day and age, most of which is online. But there are some things that people can do at a very high level with a high understanding of marketing and creating exposure and then cultivating those relationships and then converting those interested people into actual business that I think can be hugely beneficial for people looking to sell their home, especially those that had their home on the market and it didn't sell for whatever reason. So again, if that's something I can help you with, give me a call, 843-345-1273. That's my personal cell phone number, 843-345-1273. Or go to listingsincharleston.com. That's listingsincharleston.com. So I want to talk about HOAs for a little while. Two stories were recently shared with me. And I do have to say this. Most of the time, I agree that HOAs they exist for the right reasons. I think there are plenty of HOAs out there that abuse their power. There are plenty of stories I hear that just make my blood boil. And I got two of them very recently. So I want to share these with you. There was a story that was shared with me a little while ago. And it said that this homeowner decided to paint their home a very kind of a shade of teal, I guess, a very bright blue. They got permission from their HOA to do it. Well, about a week and a half later, after the home was painted, that same HOA board demanded that the owners repaint their home after an online photo was circulated around their Facebook community page for their neighborhood, where everybody was calling it the Smurf house, and there were all these negative comments, and these owners literally got death threats. How ridiculous has our society become that you're threatening somebody's life based on the color of their home? My God. But the HOA demanded that these owners repaint their home. Well, guess what? The owner's not going to do that. They already got approval to do it from the HOA. So now the HOA and the owner are considering a settlement where the home will be repainted at a paint color that's acceptable to both parties. And guess what? The HOA is going to pay for it this time, not the owner. Stuff like that I can't stand. But here's a really sad story. This one, I read the story and I was like, man, this just sucks. I hate this. So there's a story of a family that recently had their child had recently become disabled. So she needed to use the bathroom frequently. As a result of that, they needed to buy a fully appointed RV to drive her to and from her doctor appointments. Well, in January, and this was covered by a local news station where I believe it was in Charlotte. This news story covered this, and the HOA would not allow the owners to park the RV in their own driveway, saying that the bylaws ban vehicles of commercial kind and use and RVs from being parked on driveways or on streets. So the HOA suggested that these parents park the RV in a parking lot a few miles away. Well, obviously that's not going to work. What, you have to go and both parents have to get in one car to go pick up an RV so that both can drive back while leaving their disabled child in the house by itself? Well, here's the deal. First of all, what a despicable move on behalf of the HOA, but I understand what they were trying to do, I suppose. But the Federal Fair Housing Act states that HOAs have to make reasonable accommodations to persons with disabilities to allow them full use of their home, which was said by an attorney that was overlooking the case. So it said, in this case, the laws in the area very heavily lean in favor of the homeowner, who, by the way, is now suing the HOA. And so I look at some of these stories, and I read them every once in a while. They come across my news feed, or they're sent to me by some of the folks that listen to the show, actually. And I figured I'd cover this on this program. 9 things that you need to know before you buy a home in an HOA. And I would say the very first thing you need to consider if you're going to buy a home in a homeowners association is to consider your temperament as a person. Are you the type of person who hates being told what to do? If so, living in this kind of community is probably going to be a very frustrating experience for you. One of the major benefits, of course, of homeownership is the ability to customize and alter your home to suit your needs. But if there's an HOA that interferes with this, it's going to lead to a ton of frustration for you. So the second thing, of course, that would naturally follow that is to learn the HOA's rules. You know, you're probably able to find covenants and restrictions and bylaws online for just about any neighborhood out there. And if you don't, then you can at least find their property management company and then contact that property management company to take a look at their covenants and restrictions and their bylaws, which very specifically state what you can and cannot do, along with processes associated with updating your home, making repairs, submitting requests. so on and so forth. So just learn those rules. The third thing that I'll say is that you need to make sure the home you want to buy is not already out of compliance with the HOA. And we had this happen very recently. We were looking at a property, a buyer agent, and one of our clients was, and there were several red flags about the property. This is a townhome. And as it turned out, the townhome was not in compliance with the HOA. And had we not asked those questions, there would have been several $1,000s worth of repairs and fines incurred by the new owner from the HOA because it was out of compliance. You know, the number 4 thing that I would say is to assess the environmental practices of the HOA. If you're the kind of person that wants, you know, a garden outside your home and you want to use compost and maybe you want to take it up a notch, maybe you want to put some solar panels on your property, your HOA might not allow you to do that. So you need to, again, go back to the covenants and restrictions and bylaws and read through that. And if you can't figure it out or you can't find it, then call up the president or call up anybody in the HOA, get directed to the right person and ask those questions. It'd be best if you sent them an email so you got something in writing. But again, it's going to revert back to the master deed, the covenants and restrictions, and the bylaws. That's really what they go off of. Number 5, you need to find out about fees. Fees differ from community to community. There's no, boilerplate fee structure for a neighborhood as it relates to certain kinds of things. And so what you need to know is how much is the annual HOA fee a year? Are there increases planned? How often do they increase? How often have they been increased over the past 10 years? Can you get a printed history of the HOA dues year by year over the last 10 years if you really want to be strict about it? How big is their reserve fund? This is a huge, huge question. Look at some of the luxury condos in the Charleston area where they're having some exterior problems right now. And over the past several years, regime fees were not collected as much as they should have, or capital contributions at closing weren't received as they should have. And now they've got maintenance issues, major, costly maintenance issues, and they don't have enough reserve funds for it. So guess what's going to happen? The 2 words you never want to hear when you own a condo: special assessment. The people that already own the condos are going to have to pay for that, when the reserves that go into the account every month should go toward maintenance at later times. So you need to find out about that. That's a big one. The other thing you need to compare and look at is, you know, your dues and your fees versus other like-kind communities. You know, if you're not totally in love with this neighborhood and the one across the street is significantly less in terms of HOA, or, you know, the other thing is if you don't want the pool, the tennis court, the gym, the this, that, and the other, you know, don't pay the $850 a year that they're going to charge you for all those things. Maybe find a different community that doesn't have those things that you don't want and save yourself some money. But you at least need to do the research. Now, if you want to take it another step further, you could try and get the minutes from the last meeting for the last time the HOA meeting occurred. And the minutes that you read are pretty interesting if you've ever been to an HOA meeting or if you've ever read through the minutes. And I'm here to tell you that, unfortunately, I have, and it's not a fun read by any stretch of the imagination. But you need to try and find out what are the past and current conflicts, what's the process for resolving any sort of conflict, and has the HOA sued anyone, or has anyone sued the HOA? Things you need to know. Number 7, you know, not every HOA is overmanaged. Some of them are undermanaged. There was this story of this one person that was looking over an HOA, and I think this was in Texas, and over an 8-year period, she took something like $3 million from the residents in a community. She was creating false invoices, getting them signed off on by a different company that her partner had created, and money was just funneling into this LLC that she had created, which was the homeowner's money that was supposed to be going toward their reserves, and it was just a huge mess. So find out if they're undermanaged. This would also be a good time to ask the question of renting your property out. What does that look like? Are they really strict? Do you have a certain number of properties that can be rented at a given point in time? Do you have to join some sort of waiting list to put your home up for rent? You know, what happens if you get into some sort of distress situation and you have to rent your property out to cover the payment? You know, look into those kinds of things. What does that mean? Number 8 would be find out what kind of insurance the HOA carries on let's say it's a condo, what kind of building insurance they have, you know, home and, well, not home, but hazard insurance, flood, wind and hail, earthquake, fire, all that stuff. I can tell you that, there's a condo that I've owned for 8 years maybe. The HOA fees for the past several years have been astronomical. I mean, with the regime fees and the special assessment we had to pay and the insurance that went up, I think we were paying close to $600 a month on a regime fee for a condo that was worth like $60,000. And no, I'm not kidding about those numbers. Not fun. And then the last thing I'll say is that you have to consider the impact of HOA fees on your short and your long-term finances. When you're looking at, let's say that you're downsizing, you want to retire, you want to move into a condo. Don't just look at the price of the condo. You have to look at the cost of the monthly ownership of that property in totality. Some people miss that. Some people look at townhomes and they don't realize that there's an HOA fee associated with that. So just because it's a condo and because you see it as being less expensive than a single family home doesn't necessarily mean that it is. So look at those fees in totality. So that's just a little bit of some things that you need to look at, watch out for if you're going to buy in an HOA. And, I will say that there are plenty of HOAs in this area that are run very, very well. I don't want to put down HOAs, but it's very easy to get yourself into trouble if you don't do your due diligence to determine whether or not you can live comfortably and peacefully and abide by the rules of the HOA in the community that you choose to live in. So when we come back, I'm going to kind of talk about open houses for a little bit and the secrets associated with open houses. Do they actually work? Can you make them work? Are they really more for the real estate agent? I'm going to answer those questions when we come back. This is the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show on the Big Talker 1250 WTMA. Remember to give me a call if you have questions at 843-345-1273 or go to my website, listingsincharleston.com.
Hear the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show every Saturday morning at 9 and each Sunday morning at 10 on 1250 WTMA and WTMA.com. WTMA. Expert news and views on the Lowcountry real estate scene. The Brian Beatty Real Estate Show on 1250 WTMA.
Welcome back, Charleston, to the last few minutes of the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show here on the Big Talker 1250 WTMA. We've talked about a lot so far this hour. We've talked about the state of the market. We've talked about marketing your home and what that looks like from an online marketing perspective. We just talked about some things that you need to know if you're going to buy a home in an HOA, some questions to ask, some due diligence to perform before you own a home. Shared some unfortunate stories with you about how mean HOAs can be at times, or at how relaxed they can be at times, maybe to a fault. So if that's something that you're interested in, you didn't hear that part of this program, go to my website, listingsincharleston.com, and it'll be on the website probably Sunday, maybe Monday. And if you'd like more information about who I am and what I do, and you're interested in buying or selling a home, give me a call. My cell phone number is 843-345-1273. That's 345-1273. Always happy to help, and always do want to say thank you to those of you that reach out. I really do appreciate that. Get a lot of questions, a lot of just kind of general knowledge. Hey, Brian, can you help me out? Or, hey, Brian, do you know somebody that can fix a HVAC system? And, of course, the people that say, we're thinking about buying or selling a home. And so do want to say thank you to those of you that afford me that opportunity. And I'm going to keep doing this show as a service to the Charleston area just to give you an idea of what's going on in our market. The purpose here is to educate you and to help you understand the real estate market so you can make some informed, realistic decisions. And then, of course, know more about the hiring process when it comes time to hire an agent so that they can help you through that. So feel free to go to my website, listingsincharleston.com. More information about me there. And, of course, the 2.4% listing commission to sell your home this year still applies. But I want to talk for just a few minutes about open houses. So here's my process for an open house. About a week or so, maybe 10 days before an open house is scheduled to happen, we're going to put it on Facebook. We're going to put it on Craigslist. We're going to change all of the language on our listings online, whether it be Zillow, Trulia, Realtor.com, the MLS, so on and so forth, to say that there is an open house at this particular day and time. We're going to then call our database. We're going to call real estate agents. We're going to send out email blasts. We're going to call neighbors. We're going to say, hey, we're having an open house next Sunday from 1 to 3. Do you know of anybody thinking about moving into the neighborhood? Would you mind giving me their contact information so I can personally invite them? Blah, blah, blah. We do all these things to try and create as much activity as possible in an open house. But if you were to ask what is the main purpose of an open house and the real estate agent tells you to sell your home, I would say that that's not an accurate statement. The truth of the matter is open houses for a real estate agent are the best way, for free, by the way, to train new clients. It's a way of exposing your home, using your home to get people to walk through the door so that that agent can potentially sell them on their services when they go and it's ultimately time for them to buy. You know, when I first started out in this business, I did a ton of open houses, like well over 100 of them. And it was an opportunity for me to immerse myself in a neighborhood and look like a local expert. And look, I was 21 when I got licensed. I didn't have sales under my belt. I didn't have experience. I didn't have business experience from another career. It was, I've been in a real estate family that sold real estate for like 60 years. So I grew up doing it. I understand the language and the mentality behind it, but I didn't have any sales background. So I used it as an opportunity to be more visible in my marketplace that I wanted to focus on, and then use my charm and my knowledge and my ability to talk effectively about the market to earn business. And most of the time it worked. It's kind of understood within the real estate industry that new agents will cozy up next to a more successful listing agent, kind of like what I am now with my team. We've got 15 people on the team. We carry a fairly large amount of inventory at any given point in time, but we'll probably sell 175 homes this year. So there's a lot of turnover, a lot of homes, and a lot of action. And so new agents without that level of business will say, hey, can I hold one of your listings open? And we'll ask the owner, and we'll say, sure. Well, they're doing that as a way of kind of leveraging the listing that already exists within their company, which is Keller Williams Realty, to try and find some business for themselves. So that begs the question, do open houses work at all? Or are they just this big farce for agents to get leads? Well, the answer is yes. They do work some of the time, but very rarely. Open houses, aside from allowing your agent time in your home to try and pick up some clients, can be an effective way of allowing a buyer to come and view your home without having to speak to a real estate agent first. And I think this is probably the most beneficial part of an open house is that, when a buyer is interested in a property, they see it online and they call that real estate agent. Well, then that agent's going to want to meet them in their office, and then they're going to want to talk about their services and how great they are and how they're the best this, that, and the other. And then they're going to want them to get them pre-approved, and then they're going to ask you to sign a bunch of stuff. When in reality, the buyer just wants to see the house. So visiting an open house to them is kind of a low-pressure way of them walking through the door to see if they're interested or not, which is why buyer agents have learned that, and they are willing to do open houses because they know that people will show up because they're generally in the market to look at buying a new home. But you have to ask yourself, if the buyer is truly interested in buying something right now, why wouldn't they have just made an online inquiry or called a listing agent in the first place? A lot of the people that visit open houses aren't ready to buy right now. They are not what I would call an A buyer. They're a B or a C, meaning anywhere from 2 to 3 months out to 6 to 12 or more months out. They're just doing some research. And so it's interesting when you look at the actual stats. Yard signs, which include open house signs, only accounted for 9% of all sales last year, according to the National Association of Realtors. The only other marketing avenue that is a lower percentage was print media, which came in at a whopping 1% in terms of the resource that a buyer used to find their new home. What was the number one? Of course, you guessed it, online marketing. That's why we spend all of our time and energy and resources there, because that's where the buyers are. That's where the information is. Open houses, again, in my opinion, someone might have a different opinion about this, but I've done enough to formulate my own opinion on this. This isn't me just reading some article that I found on Zillow or something. I've done well over 100 open houses, so I can tell you beyond a shadow of a doubt that I believe that open houses are good for creating exposure and for allowing buyers to walk in that want to see real estate in general, but you'd be much better off spending time perfecting your online marketing campaign and using some other marketing mediums to reach people that are truly interested in buying homes right now. Because although finding a lead that wants to buy something in 6 months is great for the agent, doesn't do anything for you as a seller. That's what you need to know. So if I can help you with regard to your real estate needs, you want to buy or sell a home, give me a call, 843-345-1273, or go to listingsincharleston.com. That's listingsincharleston.com. Remember that 2.4% listing commission to help you sell your home this year. Thank you so much for tuning in, Charleston. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. This is the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show here on the Big Talker 1250 WTMA.
Join us for another edition of the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show next Saturday morning at 9 and Sunday morning at 10. Contact Brian Beatty online at listingsincharleston.com. That's listingsincharleston.com. Or call him at 843-345-1273. 843-345